Hello and welcome everyone to the final part of our fourth unit. So today we will do the third part of our fourth unit. So in this we will look at the two types of error which we can get while collecting data. So first one is sample error and second one is non-sample error. So before starting all this error and the types of mistakes that we do while collecting sample, let us understand about population and sample. So what is population? So population. Suppose you are told to collect data from a class of 50 students. So all those 50 students will be your population. All the 50 students who are there present in the class will be your population. Among those 50 students, you decided that you will collect the data from a selection of 20 students. So those 20 students will become your sample. So I hope this part is clear to all of you. That population is what? All the number of people or all the data points from where you can collect your information or data. And sample is what? The selected number of people or your data points from which you have decided to collect your data and conduct your research. So now we will talk about sample error. So sample error is of two types. One is sampling error and another one is non-sampling error. Non-sampling error. So what are these two? If we talk about the sample error occurs when our sample does not represent the population properly. So whenever our sample does not represent the population, it is known as sample error. For example, over in the here in the first example, there are a sample of 20 students. So you will see the average marks of so you will see the average marks of 20%. 20% average in mathematics. Maybe the average of 20% in mathematics is 70. But when we calculate the 50% average, all the students' average in mathematics, it comes to 60. So this is known as sampling error, when the error between the real mean and our sample mean, the difference that is given between the real number and our sample number is known as sampling error. So what is the sampling error over here? So we can see 70 minus 60, we have a sampling error of 10. As you can understand, when our sample does not represent the population properly, it is known as sampling error. So what are the process in which we can avoid the sample error? If you want to reduce the sample error, first of all understand, excuse me, first of all please try to understand that the error which we do test cannot be removed completely. It can only be reduced up to a certain point. So there are two ways in which we can reduce the sampling error. First one, we have to increase the sample size. If we take an average of, we were taking an average of 20 students. Average of 20 students and it was coming to 60. Now, if we take an average of, let's suppose 40 students. So, obviously, 40 students will represent the class in a better way. Suppose their average comes to 63. So, obviously, 40 students will represent the real average in a better way than 20 students. So, when we increase the sample size, we get a number which is closer to the real population. So, real population was how much? So, we had 50 students and the real population average was 60. So, When we increase our sample size, we'll get a number which is closer to the real number. Second is use appropriate sampling techniques. So we have discussed in details about the different sampling techniques, and for different purposes we have to calculate we have to use appropriate sampling method according to that particular area. For example, uh, if we are talking about the marks, we can use random sampling. In this, we will collect randomly 40 students. Suppose we randomly collect 25 students out of 50 students. So this is one of the sampling technique. There is another sampling technique which is known as clustered sample. Suppose there is a very large population in the class. Suppose there is a total of 100 students in the class. So you have to make different clusters. Suppose you take 50 students who are good in mathematics, and then you make another section of 50 students who are bad in mathematics. So among these 50, you will take suppose 10 students, and from this bad you will take 10 students. So after taking these 10 students, you will get a 20 students, and then you will find out their average. So according to the condition and the situation, you have to take appropriate sampling techniques. Now we will move on to the non-sampling error. Now we'll move on to the non-sampling error. So the non-sampling error is of specifically 4 types. Now we will study about the first type. First type is data collection. If we wrongly collect data, there is a mistake in the way in which we collect data. So what can be our first mistake? That the questionnaire was not properly made. For example, the questionnaires were formed for collecting the data of how much marks the students are getting in mathematics. But by some mistake, we are collecting the average marks which the students have got in total. The total marks. We are not collecting only the marks of mathematics. So this will be a wrong questionnaire. Second, interviewer bias. Interviewer bias is what? If the interviewer has some own opinion and they want to impress that opinion on that particular class. For example, the school have given the researchers some money to say that the school is performing well in mathematics, so that the next year more students enroll into their classes. So even after getting all the data, the interviewer will show that they have performed good in mathematics, so that the interviewer gets money and the school will get more admission in the next year. That is known as interviewer bias. Influencing respondents' answer. C is respondent's error. Respondent error is what? If you are going to question someone and you want to fill some question research answers, you will see that many respondents are not interested in answering your particular question. They will give out any answer without even thinking about the question. So that is known as respondent error. And last one is non-response bias. Non-response bias is what? They will not give out any response. They will just leave the questions and then give you back the questionnaire. And in this way, you will not be able to collect data in a correct way and give the answers to the research questions. If we move on to the next sampling error, it is of data processing. Suppose you have collected the data So this data processing is any mistake which we do while processing that particular data, while collecting information from that particular data. For example, there can be a mistake in data entry. For example, 40 students, how much they have got marks, how you have calculated the average. Any mistake in that will be known as data processing. It can be a mistake in coding, editing, or analysis of that particular information. Those all come under the process of data processing. Next, we will move on to survey design. Next, we will move on to the survey design. In survey design, you can see that the sampling frame is not done in a correct way. For example, like I said, there will be a population. Suppose you have to collect information about how many people are giving their votes to a particular political party. So in a population of 200 people, only 150 people cast vote. So this 150 people will become your sample frame. This 150 people will become your sample frame. Sample frame. So any mistake in doing an incomplete sample frame, that will come under survey design. Second is coverage error. You cannot interview all the persons who come under a particular survey. C is selection bias. As I have told you, if you support a particular political party, if you supporting a particular political party, you will select only those people who are supporting that particular political party, so that your research proves that that party is doing good work. So this is known as selection bias. Number fourth and the last point is interpretation. How you collect the data and what you understand from that particular data is known as interpretation. So now we will see how we can reduce this, particular types of error. First, we have to carefully design that particular questionnaire. Second, we have to do a thorough training before we go on to collect the data. Whether the researcher collects the data or the or anyone else is sent to collect the data on the behalf of the researcher, they should have extensive experience and extensive training before doing that work. Effort should be done to minimize non-response. So you should make the effort by telling the persons to fill up the form or checking from time to time whether they have filled up the required questionnaire or not. And rigorous data processing. So while you do research, the data which you have collected should be tested through many tests to see that the data processing is done in a correct way. Then comes accurate sampling frame. As we have discussed in the previous slide only, I am not going to elaborate on this one. And then finally we come on to the sound research design. So your research design should be done in such a way that there is no way to have sampling error or non-sampling error. So this is all for now. So with this we complete unit 4, and thank you so much for watching these video lectures, and we will meet in the next video.